Hey folks, Dr. Lava here. Well, last week we went over Red and Blue's cut content, like the Lost City and Professor Oak is the final boss. This week we're going to talk about Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Generation 1 had a lot of content cut because of a lack of storage space on a Game Boy cartridge. Generation 2 was meant to be even bigger, so they were facing the exact same problem, but on a larger scale. That is, until future Nintendo president Satoru Iwata came along. Game Freak only employed about 4 programmers, but Iwata wasn't one of them. At the time, he was president of HAL Laboratories, but that didn't stop him from writing a compression algorithm that allowed Game Freak to squeeze the entire region of Kanto and lots more content into Gold and Silver. In Ultra Sun and Moon, Game Freak programmer Shigeki Morimoto actually gives a shout-out to Iwata, explaining that when they were having trouble fitting all the data in for Gold and Silver, and they were really in a pinch, this amazing guy came along and made a program for them that solved all their problems. But even with Iwata's contributions, Generation 2 still had a massive amount of content cut, much of which was unknown to the public until 2018, when the Space World 1997 demos of Gold and Silver were leaked and torn apart by hackers, revealing Pokemon, trainers, and more material that was present in the demo, but not in the final release. So let's have a look at the 4 best chunks of cut content and beta elements from Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. First, the world itself. All the Pokemon games are based on various regions of Japan, with the release versions of Gold and Silver taking place in Johto, based on the Kansai region, as well as Kanto, based on the real-life region of the same name. But in the Space World demos, the Kansai region is represented by only 2 towns, and Kanto's just one very large city, with the whole of the world map based on the entirety of Japan turned on its side. For example, Burdon is a desert city, like its real-life inspiration of Totori. And this snowy island is based on Japan's northernmost island of Hokkaido. As the final build only takes place in Kansai, or Johto as it's called in-game, neither desert nor snow environments are included. Because the world is based on all of Japan, more real estate is devoted to islands and ocean, with many cities only accessible by water or incredibly long bridges, which at this point in development were still under construction. A Pokemon Zoo can be found in Sendai, and a Pokemon Aquarium is located in Kochi, 2 more locations that didn't make it into the final build. Interestingly, the city located where Hiroshima should be is where you'll find the ruins of Alph, leading some to speculate there's some connection between the unknown and the dropping of the atomic bomb. There aren't just unused locations in the demo, there are actually beta maps hiding in the internal data of the release versions as well. The most interesting beta map is the one for the Lake of Rage, which was once meant to be a full-scale city with a gym, which explains why it's a location that you can fly to in the final release, despite not being a city like the other fly locations. In the release version, Sprout Tower is only 3 stories tall, but the internal data includes maps for an additional 6 floors, bringing the total to 9, which would explain why this NPC in the release version says the tower was once supported by a Bellsprout that was 100 feet tall. There are 3 more unused locations that can be found in the internal data and accessed with the Game Shark: the Pokemon Laboratory on Cinnabar Island and the Pewter City Museum of Science, as well as a tiny safari zone meant for Fuchsia City, which was transformed into the PAL Park in the Generation 3 remakes HeartGold and SoulSilver. A few key trainers were cut out or repurposed as well. A villain named Imposter Professor Oak can be found in the demo, and there are even a few trainer cards for the TCG based on Imposter Oak released around the same time, so it seems he was once meant to be a prominent antagonist, but for unknown reasons, never made it into the games. At the time the demo was produced, Satoru Iwata hadn't come along yet and solved their data compression problems, so Kanto was much smaller, only containing a single gym. The leader of that gym is the trainer known as Red, the main character from Generation 1, who in the final release is hiding deep within Mount Silver. In the final builds of Gold and Silver, the Elite Four consists of Will, Koga, Bruno, and Karen, but in the demo's internal data, the Elite Four are listed as Bruno, Lorelei, Misty, and Giovanni. In the demo, Giovanni can also be found on the top floor of the radio tower, the same radio tower that Team Rocket takes over in the release version, so he must have originally been intended as the radio tower's final boss. Even though Giovanni didn't make it into the final build, he did find his way into the Gen 3 remakes HeartGold and SoulSilver, where rather than at the Elite Four and the radio tower, you only get to battle him at his hideout in Tojo Falls. The mobile system GB was a combination of hardware and software that allowed its subscribers to gain access to unique features in Pokemon Crystal that were never made available to gamers outside of Japan. But the service didn't come cheap. For starters, you needed a cell phone, as well as the mobile adapter GB to connect your phone to your Game Boy. The adapter alone cost $50 when it debuted, $20 more than the game itself, and many of its features, like each individual battle and trade, charged gamers in the form of microtransactions at about 10 cents apiece. But the features it unlocked would have blown your mind back in 2001. You could actually take your Game Boy online, not just for trading and battling. There were lots more features like exclusive minigames, Pokemon-themed trivia quizzes, and a monthly Pokemon news publication that was delivered straight to your Game Boy. The service kept track of all kinds of stats, like number of steps taken, battles fought, trades, and even largest Magikarp caught, and posted them to public leaderboards. You could connect the service to Pokemon Stadium 2 on your Nintendo 64 and download battle data from official tournaments, like a massive one called the Nintendo Cup 2000, then watch the tournament unfold in full 3D on your N64. You could even choose one of the participants from the tournament that you just watched and actually battle against their team of Pokemon controlled by an AI opponent. What the service is probably most famous for is giving its subscribers access to a special event that summoned a level 30 Celebi, one of the only legitimate methods of catching the elusive number 251 and completing the Johto Pokédex. This special event was never made available internationally until Gold and Silver were ported to the Virtual Console in 2018, with the Celebi event included. Even for Japan, the service was way ahead of its time, and since American children of 2001 were less likely than Japanese children to have their own cell phones, it was never brought stateside or anywhere outside of Japan. And finally, the Pokemon themselves. According to a 1997 interview with Pokemon's creator Satoshi Tajiri, including the red and blue designs, at that point they designed a pool of over 350 creatures to choose from, with the Game Freak staff frequently voting to determine which ones would make it into the games. It seems the list of Pokemon that would ultimately be included was constantly in flux. The Space World demo included a few Pokemon that wound up being pushed back into later generations. There were also some interesting early designs of Pokemon that did make it into the final build, but in a different form. But rather than look at all the demo's monsters, we're just going to focus on the Pokemon that were cut out entirely and never made it into Generation 2 or any future generations. For example, Chikorita was always going to be the Grass starter, but the Fire starter in its evolved forms were originally going to be a family of bears. The Water starter in its evolutionary line, like Lapras, were going to be based on the Plesiosaur. Turban isn't listed in the demo Pokédex as having any evolutionary links with the Slowpoke family, but my guess is they probably would have had some evolutionary related interactions together at the Slowpoke well. This surface-dwelling sunfish evolves into a half-steel shark, then ultimately into a deep-sea gulper eel, with each form representing a creature that dwells progressively deeper down in the ocean. Quillfish's evolution is listed in the Pokédex as just water, but looks like he may have also been half-electric type. Trading a Ditto holding a metal coat would trigger its evolution into Animon, who's a normal type Pokemon but may have had some steel-like attributes like a higher defense stat. Girafarig's half-normal, half-dark type re-evolution is a pair of conjoined twin ghosts. Farfetch'd, a duck, was going to evolve into this swan named Madam. These electric tigers, as we mentioned last week, were also cut from Generation 1, maybe because the developers thought there were enough cat Pokemon already. The same goes for these dark-type felines, which the Pokédex tells us only come in female form. Similar to Gloom's alternate evolution Blossom, this alternate evolution of Weepinbell would have evolved using a Poison Stone, an item that was also cut from the game. Bombseel could have been the series' first dual-type water and fire Pokemon, but after he was cut, we didn't end up getting one until Volcanion in Generation 6. This straw voodoo doll and its evolution, a Chinese-style vampire panda, were probably cut for being too creepy. These two ice-type werewolves were placed in the Pokédex just after Houndour and Houndoom, and may have been meant as their elemental counterparts. Pinsir's evolved form might have later been revised into Heracross, who hadn't been conceived of yet when the demo was produced. And finally, we have these 8 scrapped baby forms of Gen 1 Pokemon, which are pretty self-explanatory and for the most part, pretty boring too, which is probably why they were thrown out. Looking at the Pokemon that eventually replaced all these monsters in the release version, I think we came out on top in the end. But it's hard to look at all these unused Pokemon, not to mention everything else we missed out on, without dreaming about how incredibly different Generation 2 might have been. Okay, there was some more cut content, like Payday originally being a field move that could be used outside of battle, probably as a means of acquiring cash, and a skateboard in the demo that performed a similar function as the bicycle, but according to the Japanese gold and silver promotional site circa the 90s, would allow players to reach unexpected locations. But like always, this is a best of list, so those cut features are only going to get this week's honorable mentions. Okay, we've got more Pokemon episodes coming up, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that, and check out our past videos for more Nintendo cut content. I'd like to thank Gotta Critique 'Em All and artist Rachel Briggs, who provided some of the analysis and all of the fan art for the scrap demo Pokemon. So they'll be linked down below if you want to check them out, along with all my other sources. If there are any corrections that need to be made, they'll be down below as well. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.